Welcome into the Boston Sports Summit presented by the Grid Network. I'm your host, Tim Barnett, and today we got a jam-packed show for you, which is all going to center around the fact that the Boston Bruins are this team that is going to drive me up a wall and might drive me into an early grave. Let's be honest. That performance last night was an absolute joke. I don't know if, you don't even have to have watched hockey in your life. You don't have to know anything about the game. You don't have to know anything about sports. You just have to know that the Bruins were up 3-1 in the series over the Maple Leafs and subsequently let the Leafs back in this series with just an absolutely awful performance. And it was so awful that, you know what? I thought this video clip would be a perfect example of what happened last night.
You choked. It was yours for the taking, and you choked. You were ready, and you choked.
Exactly. You choked. That's it. And I know there's still technically 2 more games to be played. You know, if they win tomorrow night, series is over. But if somehow the Leafs win again, there's a game 7. So we don't want game 7. I can tell you this right now. And I was so infuriated because you had this team who was dominating against the Leafs, a team that I wanted the Bruins to see. The Bruins 100% needed to play the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they were doing everything that they needed to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I am always nervous when it comes to playoff hockey. Even if it's a team that I'm looking at going, oh, we have their number. We're better than them. We're, head and shoulders, whatever you want to call it, right? It still scares me. A perfect example, looking back last season with the Florida Panthers. That scares me. And to see the Bruins just fall flat on their face. No, actually, I can't even say they fell flat on their face. I can't even say that. Because they didn't. Actually, no, they did show up. They were so tight. They were gripping their sticks so tight last night that they had zero circulation going into the sticks. That's how tight the Bruins were gripping those sticks. And it was wildly infuriating to watch. The fact that first period ended 1-1 with Trent Frederick getting that game-tying goal was a miracle in and of itself. But before we get into the game, I want to start off with just the lineup, right? So again, something so simple. There was a report that came out late on Monday, early Tuesday. I'm pretty sure it was late Monday. That was, hey, the Bruins can get Forbort back. They're going to get Breslow back. And I saw that and I went, okay, don't mess it up, right? Don't mess this up. That's all you have to do is don't overthink it and don't mess this up. So what do? They overthink it. Now, I know it's a lot of names right there, but the only thing you should be concerned about is that fourth line where it reads on the left, Game 4 lineup, Beecher, Boquist, Maroon. Game 5 is Maroon, Boquist, and Breslow. Now on defense, the third pairing is what you should be concerned with Wotherspoon and Shattenkirk. But in Game 5, you get Grzelcyk and Wotherspoon. Why? Why did you mess with the lineup? Especially for the fact that you took out Johnny Beecher on the fourth line for Justin Breslow. And in case you didn't know, Johnny Beecher is your best face-off man. This series really has shown why you're missing Patrice Bergeron, especially on the defensive zone face-offs. But still, you take out your best face-off guy for Breslow, who, listen, I like Breslow. He's a great story in the regular season. Fun to watch. Big physical guy. You take Beecher out for Breslow, who's a 29-year-old rookie. He's slow, and he doesn't really shoot the puck all that well. What are we doing? Now, I get it. You can sit there and, maybe Montgomery's like, hey, you know what? We have this series wrapped up in the bag. We don't have to worry about it. We just want to give our guys some fresh legs. No. I'm sorry. This is the friggin' playoffs. There is absolutely no reason to give a guy fresh legs because you're up 3-1 in the series. Hell, if you're up 3-0 in the series, this is game 4 and you're up 3-0, I'd be worried about game 4 if you lost it. That's the type of thing that scares me. And like I mentioned, you had the best defensive game in game 4. And yet you tinker with the lineup just because you get a couple of guys back. And you put Grzelcyk in the friggin' fold. Why? I don't care that his father worked for the team. I don't care that he's a local boy. Because guess what? Every regular season, he'll play well for you. But then when you get into the playoffs and things get a little bit more physical, a little bit tougher, a little bit harder, you're going to be benching him. It happened under Cassidy, and it's happening under Montgomery. Montgomery, I don't know why he put him back in last night. I don't. It was freaking foolish to see that mentality, to see that. Why? Shattenkirk, yeah, he's probably not your best. He's definitely not your best defenseman. He's not he's more of an offensive defenseman. But even still, he was playing a hell of a lot better than Grzelcyk. He's been on championship teams, right? So leave his ass in there. There was zero reason. I looked high and low. Zero reason for Shattenkirk's name to be pulled, right? And Grzelcyk to go back in. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, they wanted to leave Mason Lowry in. That's why we put in Grzelcyk. Well, unless Shattenkirk is hurt, which is something I haven't heard about, why is he in the net? I mean, why is he not out there? And why is Grzelcyk out there? Because as I brought up, and I'll bring it up again, -7. Actually, he's probably like a -8, -9 after last season. Yeah, and this is 3 postseasons, not including, including this one. So why is Grzelcyk out there? And talk about a guy who's overpaid, even for what he is, right? It's like what the guy makes. It is absolutely ridiculous that, again, Boston is so hung up on keeping their guys, keeping their hometown guys. I mean, Grzelcyk makes $3.6875 million a year, and he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Well, guess what? If he makes a dollar more than that, that's going to be a gross overpayment, because he'll play for you in the regular season. He'll do well in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he's a bum. He gets cut, right? That's why it bothers me so much that, Jim, I told you, on Twitter, don't overthink it. You just won game 4. You took both in Toronto. Don't overthink it. It's unbelievable. And then getting into the game, right? You could tell literally minutes into that first period that this was going to be a long game for Boston, because they were wound up like a friggin' top, honestly. And it's funny because, listening to the radio and reading Twitter, some people are calling it like lack of focus, and others are calling it they're too tight, they're too nervous. And honestly, I would go with the latter, because if you want to talk about the lack of focus, I'd attribute that to like the Celtics, right? The Celtics are a lack of focus type of team where they'll be up 30 points, and then all of a sudden in the final minute, it's a 5-point game, You know what I mean? So that's being unfocused. The Bruins, my God, you could just imagine what that locker room was like prior to the game, because you could just see them, their heads down going, okay, all right, it's a closeout game, guys. We have an opportunity to get a week's worth of rest and just relax, okay? We got this. We can do this, right? That's what that locker room was probably like prior to the start of the game. Just all in their heads. They're tapping their feet. They got restless leg syndrome. It's going 1,000 miles an hour. And that's the type of energy you get. I mean, Ray Ferraro, who I've had my ups and downs with him. I swear that he's not a Bruins fan, and he's on the he's on the national broadcast. So, obviously it's a national thing. They're trying to be unbiased, but he can at least see it, look at the Bruins with fresh eyes. Okay. And Ray Ferraro, 13 minutes into the game, said that this team is tight and needs to just take a breath. Guys, you haven't lost anything. There's 7 minutes remaining in the first period. Relax. It's okay. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's what he was like. That's what he sounded like. And he's 100% correct. Why? What was the problem? Brad Marchand is the only Bruin that has won a Stanley Cup. He knows what it's like to go the distance. Now, some of the other guys have varying degrees of playoff, I don't want to say format, but of playoff metal, right? But the metal with this team is just shot. And the funny thing is, again, I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm mentioning it now. The Maple Leafs didn't have their best player. Austin Matthews is out due to God knows what. It's illness, an injury, no idea. So you got the Leafs, who are down 3-1, lost both games at home up in Toronto. They were arguing with each other on the bench, with Nylander screaming at Marner, stop being an effing crybaby. This ain't juniors. And that's how you come out to start game 5? Again, what was running through your mind? It was, I can't even explain it. Because to sit there and know that you get the first goal of the game, you get a goal within the first 5 minutes, maybe even the first 10 minutes, you're up 1-0. Toronto, gone, done. Series is over. But no, you came out like a bunch of jackasses who were literally white-knuckling the stick, so much so that they totally forgot the teachings of Gordon Bombay and to accept the puck when the puck hits your stick, right? Like the egg on the ice, accept the egg. Don't keep your stick frigid and bam, egg cracks. Because that puck was bouncing all around. They were so nervous and so tight that it was, honestly, it felt like a new level of Bruin right there. There is something with this Spoke B that just has this type of mentality to it. If you want to go back to, 71, I clearly wasn't alive for this, but 71, you lose to, yes, an upstart goaltender who had just so happened to be a Hall of Fame goalie in the Canadiens. The name is escaping me right now, but again, he ends up being a Hall of Famer, but he was a rookie, and you lose to him after winning the year prior, and then you won the year after that. You could have had a three-peat from 70, 71, and 72. Then you run right into the Edmonton Oilers, who were stacked beyond the gills in the early 90s. Then they lose Gretzky, and you play them in the Cup final, and you still lose. You blow a 3-0 series lead to the Hurricanes in 2009. And then in 2012, you lose to Braden Holtby of the Capitals the year after you win the Cup in the first round. You shouldn't have lost to him. In 2014, you were the President's Cup winners and lost in the second round of Game 7 off a PK Subban goal, which they showed on ESPN last night, talking all about that. And then in 2019, you lost to Jordan friggin' Binnington, who's a bum. I've said it once and I'll say it again. That kid is a bum. He sold his soul for that series. It's unbelievable how. And then, of course, 2020, 21, it's just everything. Everything about this team is all about getting your hopes up because you're doing as best you can. Like you're playing out of your skates. You're doing so well, and then you just want to blow it. And I forgot, last season, most points in NHL history, most wins in NHL history. And what do? You lose in the first round of the friggin' Panthers. Who went on to the Stanley Cup final. Doesn't matter. You had that team dead to rights in Game 5. You just pissed it away. You could have had it in Game 6. You could have had it in Game 7. You didn't. You pissed it away. That's what this team feels like to me. And, in the first period alone, again, to set the scene on how much they were gripping that stick so tight. First period alone, shots on goal, 12-2 in favor of Toronto. 2. That's right. How? And I forgot to mention, Toronto's got a backup goaltender in net because their starting goaltenders are playoff putts. Shot attempts, 30-7. 30-7 in shot attempts. Now, all the shot attempts are just shots. They don't hit the net. They go wide. It's not technically a shot on goal. But 30-7? And you somehow came out of the first period tied at 1 apiece. And then in the faceoffs, you lost 16 of 20 faceoffs. 10 out of 14 were in the defensive zone. And it's just, I'm nervous. I am nervous. And it's not Swayman's fault. Swayman was the best player on the ice last night on both teams. Yeah, and trust me, Swayman was better than Wall. But it's just mind-boggling to me that this is how you come out. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. If you want to talk to me about this, please, you can hit me up on any of my socials, on Instagram, Boston Sports Summit, on X, BOS Sports Summit, then on YouTube, Boston Sports Summit, and streaming on the Grid Network every Wednesday, 7 p.m. But it's just absolutely asinine to me that this team, with all their mettle, with all their, veteranship, leadership, this is how they come out. And I'll tell you, I was ready to give Jim Montgomery another season. Now, if God forbid, man, they blow this, they got to clean house. They absolutely have to clean house. With the only guys remaining should be Lowry, Beecher, Swayman, McAvoy. Let's pull up the lineup here just quickly. Yeah, I'm good with DeBrusk. Oh, and Pasternak. Really, everybody else, see you later, because it is just a freaking tragedy that this team, who this is the better matchup for them then going against Tampa. This team, up 3-1 in the series, comes out looking so effing bad. Like, not that they didn't show up. No. They just pissed down their leg and crapped their pants. You had half the team sitting on the pot while the other half was kneeling in front of the toilet. That's what this team did outside of Jeremy Swayman. Everybody else was doing that. And it's just unbelievable to me. You have the national broadcasters telling you to just take a freaking breath, relax, 13 minutes into the game. Imagine how, I can only imagine how you were feeling, because you can hear me and know how I was feeling. It was just, what are we doing? What are we doing? Is that Spoke B cursed? Or is it this, the players that we sign, the players that we get? They're great in the regular season, but when all is said and done, they disappear for the playoffs. Pasternak is fall guy number one. Because I don't remember the last time Pasternak has even really contributed in the playoffs. Now, he might contribute here and there, but has he been steady? Has he been the predominant goal scorer that he, is in the regular season in the entirety of the playoffs? No. He always falls short. He always falls flat. And if he doesn't wake up, and if this team doesn't wake up, then we're going to be the ones who are booking our flights to Florida or Mexico or anywhere warm and, dusting off the golf clubs, because I could have sworn that Toronto had tickets to place, Florida, Texas, Cancun, whatever, California. Toronto had their tickets in hand, ready to go. Golf clubs dusted off. All right, time to go play, 36, boys. Let's go. Who's going to win? Nope. They showed up and you didn't. It's just unbelievable to me that this is how a professional hockey team, when knowing that there's a handshake waiting to happen, this is how they perform. It doesn't give me good feelings going into Game 6. And also, in terms of the goaltender situation, if Jeremy Swayman is not the goaltender, if Jeremy Swayman is not the goaltender for Game 6, that's a friggin' problem. Because Jeremy Swayman did better than Linus Ullmark did in Game 2. And he absolutely needs to be the goaltender for the rest of the series. And I'll say this, just in case, right? Hey, the Bruins win Game 6. Don't get me wrong, I'm still nervous regardless, but the Bruins are going to get the Florida Panthers if they win tomorrow night. So with the Bruins taking on Florida, that has a whole different can of worms. That the Bruins are going to be, in my opinion, probably out-physicaled. But I think they still have a shot because they somehow play up to the competition. They just don't play up to the moment. So I would still take Florida in 7, but more on that if and when it does happen. So, all right. That's a solid 25 minutes about bitching about the Boston Bruins because rightfully so. Moving on to a team that is actually going on right now. We got the Boston Celtics, who are they're starting at 7:30, but they're looking to close out Game 5 in Boston can they, do it? Can they overcome, the aesthetics of not being able to play at home and actually close out this series? Because I'm done with the Heat. I am absolutely done with the Heat. Now, I want to jump back to last week because the last time I was on was the start of game 2. And again, similar to the Bruins, the Celtics came out flat in game 2, especially after the whole Caleb Martin and Jason Tatum incident at the end of game 1. Like, I'm sorry. How are you not just so pissed off about that? The amount of wide open looks Miami had was absolutely foolish. And Caleb Martin, the guy who tried to take out your best player, you let go for 21 points, going 7 of 12 for shooting, including 5 of 6 from 3. That's what bothers me about today's NBA. And not for nothing, probably all of today's sports outside of hockey, is that you try to pull that crap in hockey and they will zoom in on you like like a lion sees a zebra, right? That's the type of thing you get in hockey. But I feel like in basketball especially, yeah, all right, you try to take out the best player, and yeah, there might be a little scrum, there might be a little, jarring, this and that. But overall, these guys are soft, especially the Celtics. I mean, again, do you think that any of the teams would have allowed that to happen in the dating back to, I would say, heck, the early 2000s, right? Going back to early 2000s. Let's say, I don't know, Allen Iverson, not Allen Iverson, but Jason Kidd tries to take out Kobe Bryant. He does something similar to Kobe Bryant that Martin did to Tatum. Do you think that the Lakers in the early 2000s would have let that happen? Would have let Jason Kidd get another shot off? Probably not. They would probably shut him down for the rest of the series. And I mean, they did, but again, even better. Do you think if something happened to Michael Jordan, if somebody did that to Michael Jordan, do you think that the 90s Bulls would have allowed that to happen? No shot. So that's just what bothers me, is you see that and you're like, what are you doing? Do you not have any emotions? Do you not care that your best player was taken out at the hip while in midair? Do you not care that, hey, you could have been without Tatum? Stupid stuff. It's so simple. So simple. But yet here we are. Luckily, they got their act together for game 3, blew Miami out of the water. And then game 4, quite honestly, both teams sucked. It was just so much that the Bruins made more shots than the Heat. But I swear, listening to the national broadcasters and even some of the local guys, I was just, and even some of the fans too, I was getting pissed off because Stan Van Gundy won't shut his mouth and clearly is biased against the Celtics. Always has been, always will be. And so it does get annoying. But just quickly, to call Tatum rolling his ankle on Bam Adebayo Tatum's fault because he didn't like the way the Celtics were playing all game, so that's Tatum's fault? Shut your mouth, Stan. Okay? The whole point of being national is to be unbiased. And that's what drives me up a wall. It's no respect. Absolutely no respect for Boston whatsoever. And that goes across many sports. But no, it's, all right, they played like garbage. But so what? I mean, the fact that they still held the Heat under 80 points with just over 2 minutes remaining in the game, right? So 46 minutes of basketball, the Heat were only able to get 76, 78 points. Hey, you know what? The offense might not be working, but they must be doing something right on defense. Now, granted, again, it wasn't a perfect game. You know, like I said, both teams sucked. But to have, a team under 80 points in 46 minutes of play, I don't care how bad they're sucking, but that's good. That's good to me. That sounds pretty good to me. I don't know about you, but I mean, Derek White was the hero of that game on Monday night. Derek White going off, scoring a career high 38 points. And it's so funny because we always talk about, is it Tatum? Is it Brown? Is it Jalen or Jason? To me, it's Tatum and then it's White. And not because he scored 38 points, but Derek White to me has to be the smartest basketball player on the court at all times. Because the dude understands what it takes. The dude understands the scenarios, the moments, what to do, how to do this, how to read that, what Miami's doing versus what we're doing, and how to play off of it. He is literally like the quarterback. If this offense doesn't run through Derek White, I don't know how well we do. I know that we ran through Porzingis and it worked. It has worked pretty well, but Derek White to me is by far the number 2 option in this offense, not just to shoot as the number 2 option, but the number 2 option as a whole. And quite frankly, he might be the number 1, because he is just so damn smart when it comes to playing this game. And I'm going to go back to last season in Game 6, where Marcus Smart took that horrendous 3-point attempt because he loves playing the hero. And I hated it then, and I still hate it now. But the reason why there was a Game 7 is because Derek White, after he gave the ball to Smart, did the heads-up thinking and ran to underneath the basket. So when inevitably that Smart missed the shot, White was right there. Boop. In it goes. Celtics win. Force a Game 7. That's Derek White. And I feel like the dude is wildly underrated. And so it was great to see him be really the savior of Game 4, knowing that Tatum sucked, Brown sucked, everybody sucked. Oh, and not to mention, Kristaps Porzingis had to leave due to a non-contact injury, which ended up being a right soleus strain, which is a muscle in the calf. So the $1 million question is, how long is he going to be out? Is it a grade 1, a grade 2, or a grade 3? Obviously, the Celtics are keeping that pretty tight-lipped. But do you want to know someone else who had a right soleus strain recently? Giannis Antetokounmpo. And he's been out since early April. It's currently May 1st. He's been out for at least 3 weeks to about a month. And the rumor mill has it that he actually is hoping to make his return. And, if he does, again, it'll be roughly 3 weeks to a month. And who knows how he's going to play when he makes his return. Because you have to remember, it's the calf muscle is one of the scariest injuries for a basketball player. Because you're jumping, you're landing, you're pivoting, you're cutting. There are so many aspects to the calf muscle and what an NBA player does. And the worst thing that could happen is if you rush him back, does that leave the Achilles weakened so that next thing you know, You play in 5 minutes, you make a move, and Achilles ruptures and rolls right up the back of your leg. All because you had a right soleus strain that was too severe and you tried to rush back because it's the playoffs. Now, does this impact the Celtics in terms of making it to the NBA Finals? I don't think it should. I think the Celtics should 100% still make the NBA Finals. Now, the road will be tougher without him because you have a 37-year-old Al Horford. Oh, other side. Move my head. There it is. I'm trying to play that reverse role here. You got a 37-year-old Al Horford. And then you have Luke Cornett, who just came back from injury. So it's not like you're fully healthy at that position. Now, Luke Cornett's a solid player. But do I trust him going against Nikola Jokic? No. Hell, I don't even trust Porzingis going against Jokic. For them, it would be like, who's going to miss first type of deal. Because they'll just, post up and there you go. But yeah, it's going to affect the Celtics. Like I said, should it affect them in terms of making the finals? No, of course not. This team is still too deep at all the positions to allow that to affect them. But knowing this team and knowing how they play, because they do play with somewhat of a lack of focus, that, yeah, it's going to be harder. Now, like I said, the game actually probably just started at 7:37. The game started at 7:30. So it will be interesting to see how this game plays out. But at the end of the day, the Celtics should win. The Celtics should win tonight. And whether it's Orlando or Cleveland, I think Cleveland just took a 3-2 series lead. We should beat them too. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Boston, New York, going into the Eastern Conference Finals. And that would actually be a fun series just because, hell, you can't beat a Boston, New York series, right? So, the Sixers are giving New York a good fight. But at the end of the day, I think the Knicks, I almost said Rangers. Jeez, got hockey on my mind. The Knicks should, I think, make it to the Eastern Conference Finals along with the Celtics. And at this point, I would just, let's see what happens tonight. Hopefully, at least one Boston team will close out Game 5 on their own home court. Please, God, let that happen. And they can get an extensive break, hopefully an extensive break, which will then give Porzingis more time to recover, and hopefully we'll get him back by the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, going from playoffs to offseason, the New England Patriots just finished up their draft last week, and they did what I didn't want them to do, which was stick at number 3 and take Drake Maye. But even though I didn't want them to do that, that doesn't mean I'm not glad about it. I'm actually happy that they stuck at 3. They took Drake Maye and, did what they did, during the NFL draft, because they were offered by the Giants and the Vikings several picks for number 3. And this report just came out late last week, or not even actually the other day. It just came out where Minnesota, who was the team I kept saying, trade with, because they had 11, 23. You can get a first rounder and probably a first rounder the following year, They offered 11, 23, and next year's first for number 3, and then 2 mid-round picks. So they offered 11, 23, next year's first for number 3 and 2 mid-rounders this year. What? I'm glad they said no to that. And then the Giants, which I think this is a little bit more reasonable because the Giants are only moving up from 6. but they offered 6 and a next year first, which wouldn't have been terrible. But again, it is surprising to me that, these teams really didn't jump off the diving board to give New England the quote unquote bag. The whole reports of, these life-changing offers that New England was getting clearly weren't life-changing by any stretch of the imagination. Not to mention the fact that Michael Penix went 8 overall to the Falcons. There were reports left and right, up and down, north, east, west, south, saying that Michael Penix was going to be available at 23. Michael Penix could have been available at 34. But then Atlanta took him at 8. So seeing how the first round panned out, yeah, I absolutely have a right to change my mind and say, I'm glad that the Patriots stuck at 3, took Drake Maye, and then they also got some guys that I'm intrigued by. I think the most intrigue that I have is this Javon Baker kid out of UCF who started at Alabama and then went to UCF, and he talks a big game. He talks a massive game. He talks so much that that one of his things is he can make people in wheelchairs stand up. That's the exciting plays that he has. So that's a little, wow. Okay. I'll believe it when I see it type of deal. But I love that mentality. I love that mentality, especially from a receiver, because that's what you need. That's what this team desperately needs. Because I feel like Kendrick Bourne's a nice guy. Pop Douglas is a good guy. They don't really seem to be in-your-face type guys. And you know what? For their game, I got no problem with it. I actually like that. But if you're Randy Moss, prime Randy Moss, then you better be effing acting like prime Randy Moss. It's Terrell Owens, Chad Johnson / Ocho Cinco. Guys like that Belichick loved to love outside of New England, but then bringing them in, he knew there'd be a massive headache. So that's where I'm glad. If Baker turns out to be prime, or half, I should say, of prime Randy Moss, then I'm excited for it. And good. I'm glad that he talks the way he talks. But overall, though, I want to know. You can hit me up in the comments. Don't forget, please like, share, subscribe to this video. Also comment, because I do want to know in the comments, what do you grade the Patriots offseason as a whole, right? We had the most cap space available of any team in the NFL. We had definite needs at quarterback, receiver, offensive line, especially left tackle. What do you grade the offseason? Because I have some thoughts on that. And with some of the talent that, was available as free agents and available via trade, right? The Patriots basically sat back and did nothing. With all this money in the world to spend, they acted like the Red Sox because they made this Gerard Mayo. I don't care that he's a rookie head coach, because learning under Bill, he should have known better. But he comes out and says, we're going to burn some cash. And Bill would have never said that, because it turns out they didn't spend a freaking dollar. Now, of course they did, but I mean, in terms of real money for a real player, whether that be through a trade or free agency. Now, of course, I'm slightly giving them an out by saying that the free agent pool was piss poor, was pretty weak for all the positions that the Patriots needed him. But They couldn't go out and get one guy. Like, you're sitting there and go, really? So they acted like the Red Sox, talking about how they're going to spend, but then don't spend. And then with the trade targets that are available, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, T. Higgins is available. Now, teams might be asking for, an arm, a leg, a torso, a butt cheek, an ear. They might be asking for the moon. But you can't tell me that there's not a way to get a deal done. And as much as I'm excited for the two prospects in Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, it's the offseason to me as a whole has kind of sucked. Because even though I give the Patriots draft a solid B, not a B plus, not a B minus, but I think a solid B is right in their wheelhouse. Now, again, does that mean that any of these guys are going to pan out? No. The NFL draft grade I'm giving them a B for is they focused heavily on offense and positions of need, which that's what you need to do for the draft. You need to go young. You need to focus on positions of need and as well as the best player available. So that's why I give them a B. Now, will they pan out? I have no clue. You don't have any idea. They don't have any idea. Hopefully they do. But for an entire offseason, I give this team a C minus because I thought their free agency sucked. Borderline sucked. And with the draft grade, I thought being so good, I had to go with a C minus. Overall, you had all the money in the world. You had all these positions in need, and you didn't do a damn thing in free agency. You try to do it in the draft, which is great. But the draft is a spot where you're supposed to build up your depth. Build your depth. And if those guys in their rookie seasons, beat out the veterans, great. Then you can do whatever the heck you want with the vets. Drop them, do whatever, right? Trade them, whatever. But that's why, overall, I think the Patriots as a whole, this offseason, quite honestly, deserve a C minus for it because I was just, that free agency period, I was disgusted. Now, obviously, with the trades, as much as I wanted them to trade back and to accumulate capital, I must have learned that from Bill, right? Overall, it seems like they did the right thing because had they traded back to 11, I don't know if they would have been able to get Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, and either would have had to settle for Bo Nix or Spencer Rattler, Joe Milton. I'm glad we got Joe Milton, but that's why we got Drake Maye in the first place, is so that Joe Milton doesn't come in and thinks that he's going to be the savior. Kind of like a RG3 to Kirk Cousins thing. I'm not calling Drake Maye RG3, and I'm not calling Joe Milton Kirk Cousins. I'm just saying that type of scenario. I'm glad that's what New England did. Excuse me. But lastly, to a team that's playing every day for the most part, and I was obviously not high on to start this season. And rightfully so, because I don't care, that you might say I am not a true Red Sox fan because I'm not sticking by them through the thick and thin. No, that's not what I'm doing. And if you accuse me of that, I'll fight you tooth and nail to it because I look at what ownership does. I look at what the ownership does and what they want to do and how they lead this team. And for being a major market, for being a team that is known to spend a lot of money on big-time free agents, guys that are worth it and sometimes definitely not worth it. for them to flip gears without telling us, and then to treat us like we're stupid for calling them out for saying that they don't care about the Red Sox. Yes, I have every right to boycott this team. I would think so. And if you did the same thing, I wouldn't blame you. Now, unfortunately, because of that, Fenway Park is such a historic ballpark that fans like us who are like, F this team, until ownership sells or ownership does a 180 and goes back to what they were doing and were investing in the team. Now, again, I want them to be smart with the investments, but overall. Now, unfortunately, because we're not buying tickets, also one of the highest ticket prices in the league, so wasting money, right? You're going to have fans from other teams fill up your ballpark, fill up our ballpark. And yeah, that kind of pisses me off, but I also understand what I'm doing. I'm not, excited. I'm not happy about it because I do think Red Sox fans are the best fans. It's just when ownership tells me, hey, you can't, call us out because we care. We want this team to succeed. Yeah, well, you sure as hell have a funny way of showing that, don't you? And so with also them having the highest ticket prices, why would I go to a game? To watch a bum product. Well, surprisingly, it really isn't a bum product. And I'm actually kind of glad about that. Because I want a summer. I want this team to be good. And it seems like every domino that falls is trying to make it so that they're not good and that they do fall into last place for a fourth time out of 5 years. But right now they're 4 games above 500. They're 17-13 through the first real month of the season. They're 30 games in. And like I said, I'm surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised. I don't want to talk about ownership anymore. I just want to focus the product on the field because I am surprised at how they're playing. And with Trevor Story going down the way he did, again, season's over, folks. Like, let's pack it in. Thank you, Red Sox fans. The inevitable post that will happen at the beginning of October. But no, they did the smart thing, and I think Alex Cora absolutely pushed for this to happen. They did the smart thing and had Ceddanne Rafaela move to shortstop, and ever since then, the team has gone 7-3. So basically, this team without a middle infielder sucks. They're bums. But when you give them a legit middle infielder, then they know what they're doing because obviously we saw the David Hamilton, tryout and what an absolute disaster and fiasco that was. Guy friggin' didn't know how to drag his foot on the bag. And the funny part is, like, when I see Major League Baseball players make errors, it does give me like a sense of not gratitude. Like, I don't want to say I'm happy that they made errors, but it gives them a sense of normalcy where it's like, oh, I've done that. Or, oh, I could make that play, even though, again, it's wildly different for us. But it's like you're sitting there going, I could do that, So it is interesting that baseball has that, I want to say, like, connectability to it. But yet, when you have guys like David Hamilton, who for some reason, it almost feels like it's on purpose, but he's just missing the bag completely with his back foot, giving up on a double play, essentially. You're like, really, that's when it goes from being, oh, okay, like, hey, that happens to all of us. I can make that play, a sense of relatability to, damn, dude, you just suck. You don't deserve to be here. Get the hell off my team. And that's why, like I said, I am pleasantly surprised. But at the end of the day, the reason why the Sox have been so good is due in large part, if not the entirety, to their pitching staff. Even though, yes, all the arms are falling off, and like with Nick Pivetta, Lucas Giolito going down, like this is the model that John Henry wanted, unfortunately, because he wanted the pitching staff to be good. He wants to model this team like Tampa, even though he can afford to spend 10 times more than Tampa, he still chooses to be a cheap bastard and do that. But it seems to be coming to fruition because when you look at the numbers through the first 30 games, the starting pitching staff ranks first. And this is, by the way, this is all major league. The starting pitchers rank first in ERA in the majors with a 2 even ERA. Their batting average against is 210, which is second. They strike out 8.6 guys per 9 innings, which is 12th, almost middle, just better than middle. They have they're third in the Major League Baseball in walks and hits per innings pitched with 1.02, and then allow 0.59 home runs per 9 innings, which is best in baseball. As for the relief staff, they have a 3.41 ERA, which is 8th in baseball, a 2.31 batting average against, which is first among relieving staffs in baseball. They strike out 9 guys per 9 innings, which is 13th. They have a 1.21 whip, which is 12th, and then a 0.9 homers per 9 innings, which is 12th as well. So when you combine all of that and look at it as an entire staff, they are the best in baseball with a 2.62 ERA. They're 8th in baseball with a 2.19 batting average against. They are 12th in baseball with an 8.8 strikeouts per 9 innings. They are 3rd with a 1.11 whip. And then they are 3rd in baseball with 0.7 home runs allowed per 9 innings. So, again, this staff is just dominant. And it's something that they really, if they lose this, they're screwed. They're going to be the sucky team that we all think they are, or at least most of us think they are. And we're going to be last place again. So I know it's unreasonable for me to ask to keep that up, because between the injuries that are happening and it's the first month of the season, let's see what the dog days of summer bring. And then we can talk about, the staff either keeping it up or they lost it. They lost it. What can I say? But the one other thing I wanted to mention was Breslow hasn't even been here for 6 months, give or take. Craig Breslow hasn't been in the Red Sox organization for 6 months as the president of baseball ops. And yet, somehow, this team is doing better than what Chaim Bloom ever got out of them. And I'm wondering, does that mean that Breslow is, has the secret sauce, has a way to coach these guys, to bring it out of them? And I'm not saying he's coaching them. Obviously, that's Cora, that's Andrew Bailey. But, with the pitching staff doing what they've done, it's been roughly the same guys, since Bloom has been here, obviously with a few exceptions. But Bloom keeps bringing in guys that have zero reason to be here. Frenchie Cordero is a perfect example of that. He is a nobody. He was okay in Kansas City, but then we got him and he couldn't play the field. He couldn't hit. He's Bobby Dahlback. He's a AAA Hall of Famer. But when it comes up to being in the majors, he ain't nothing, man. And so I'm wondering, because, yeah, some of these guys came from Bloom. Other guys came from Dombrowski. But, did Bloom and his staff really understand the player? Or did they just see another arm? Did they just see a guy who's, random stat? Like not any of these stats, not the ones that actually matter, but the fake stats, the stats that you have to add the batting average against with the whip, with the strikeouts, the home runs, and you get a ZTMO, which means whatever, right? Nerd speak, right? Do you get that? Which that number is phenomenal. But then when you separate everything and you present real legitimate stats to baseball guys, you're looking at it going, why would you ever sign this guy? He's a bum. Well, no. If you do this, that, and this, this number is great. Yeah, but strikeouts per 9 innings, batting average, ERA suck. I wonder if that's the case. On top of the fact, too, did Bloom and his staff try to change guys to fit what they wanted? Look at Tanner Houck. Tanner Houck's a great example of that. He came in and they try to change his delivery 1,000 ways to Sunday. And he sucked. And that's why you can never get a real good performance out of him. You got some, but not like he was never consistent. But now he's very consistent as a starting pitcher. I mean, look, he's attributing to being a top 3 staff in starting staff in baseball. So it's just it is interesting to me to see how all of this is playing out, to see how the Red Sox are just being a team that, quite honestly, I thought was gonna come in, and if we were lucky, the first 30 games would have been 15-15. But hey, 4 games above 500 through the first 30 games of the year. It's May 1st. So we still got a long way to go. And you haven't even come close to the All-Star break. And who knows? Maybe the staff will keep it up and we'll keep the Red Sox in games. But if the dog days of summer hit, guys are starting to pick up on everything. Who knows? We might have our Cinderella story end a little bit early, like we have for the last couple of seasons. So let me know what your thoughts are. You can hit me up, like I said, on all the social media. Please don't forget to like, comment on this video, share it with your friends. Talk about the Boston Sports Summit every Wednesday, 7 p.m. on the Grid Network. Also, all over social media on Instagram, Boston Sports Summit. On X and Twitter, BOS Boss Sports Summit. And then on YouTube, Boston Sports Summit. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Boston Sports Summit presented by the Grid Network. I am your host, Tim Barnett. And all I ask is that the Bruins get out of the first round tomorrow night. Please, please, for the love of God, I do not want to see a Game 7 back in the Garden, because if there's a Game 7, I'm sorry, the Bruins are going to lose. You think they were tight last night? Nothing will compare to that, them being tight for Game 7. I can tell you that much. So hopefully the Bruins end it tomorrow night and we can get talking to the Panthers next week. So tune back in. Thank you guys so much. Have a great, blessed week and weekend. And as always, my name is Tim Barnard, host of the Boston Sports Summit, presented by the Grid Network. Catch you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. God bless. Thank you.